Welcome to this deep dive. We're really diving in today into the world of data science. Um, well, sort of. We've got these fascinating materials from a budding data scientist. It's like we get to peek inside their thought process.
Oh, I like that. What kind of materials are we talking about?
So it looks like excerpts from a report, maybe for a data science program or something. It's by someone named Dania Data Analytiker. And let me tell you, it's anything B-U-T, a dry read.
Always a good sign when data science is anything but dry. What's caught your eye so far?
Well, first off, the title, dataanalytic.pdf. What do you make of that?
Well, it's not exactly winning any awards for academic formatting. Sounds like we've got a student who's still getting the hang of things.
Right, and it gets better. They even accidentally included their tutor's contact info in the document. It's these little human moments that I just love.
It's a good reminder that even in this age of algorithms and artificial intelligence, it's still people behind the code making those, shall we say, relatable mistakes.
Exactly. And speaking of code, Dania jumps right into some pretty complex stuff. Masking layering and neural network.
Now, are those Danish pastries? I wouldn't mind a little snack break right about now.
Tempting, but no. It's actually Danish for machine learning and neural networks.
Ah, even more interesting than pastries. But for those of us who haven't brushed up on our Danish data science terms lately, can you give us a quick refresher?
Of course. So basically, think of these as complex computational systems that learn from data, kind of like how we learn, but on a whole other level. And they can do some pretty incredible things like recognizing images, translating languages, you name it.
Okay, so these are the systems that are powering all those AI tools we keep hearing about.
You got it. And Danny makes really interesting points. It's not enough to just understand the programming behind these technologies. You also need to understand the people who will be using them.
Ah, so true. It's like that old saying, a tool is only as good as the person using it.
Exactly. You can have the most powerful algorithm in the world, but if it's difficult to use or understand, it won't be very helpful, will it?
Not at all. In fact, it can even be dangerous if people are blindly trusting outputs they don't understand. We've seen that happen time and time again, right?
Right, and that's what's so refreshing about Danya's take. They're really emphasizing that human element, that connection between the technology and the user experience.
Which is crucial because, let's be honest, sometimes these technologies can feel pretty intimidating. Not all of us are programmers or data scientists, and that's okay.
Exactly. And Danya gets that. They argue that anyone should be able to benefit from these tools, regardless of their technical background.
That's a pretty big statement. How do they think we can actually make that happen?
Well, they believe it's the job of data scientists and analysts to ensure that these technologies are designed in a way that's intuitive and accessible to everyone.
Makes sense. Just like any good design, it's about meeting people where they are, right?
Exactly. And it reminds me of that famous Einstein quote, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." And I think that really applies here. Dania seems to be trying to break down these complex concepts, not just for their own understanding, but to figure out how to make them accessible to others as well.
Which is a pretty tall order. So how are they tackling this challenge? What are some of the specific strategies they're exploring?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. But before we jump into Dania's proposed solutions, let's take a closer look at the world they envision, a world they call a data-driven SAM fund. Any guess what that means? Data-driven SAM fund. It's a mouthful, right?
Yeah, I'm going to need a little help with that one. It sounds a little intimidating, not going to lie.
It's Danish for data-driven society, and honestly, it's a pretty accurate description of the future Danya is sketching out here. It's not just about using data, it's about data being woven into every aspect of our lives.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but still a little fuzzy on the details. Can you walk me through it? What does a day in this data-driven SAM fund actually look like?
So imagine this. Your alarm clock goes off in the morning, but it's not just any alarm. It's been tracking your sleep patterns and knows exactly when to wake you up feeling refreshed.
Okay, that tracks. Literally, I could get used to that. What's next in this data-driven utopia?
Well, as you're starting your day, maybe grabbing your coffee, your newsfeed is already curated to your current mood and energy levels. No more doom scrolling before you've even had your first sip.
That's a serious win in my book. I'm already starting to like where this is going. What else?
Your commute, no problem. Traffic patterns are constantly being analyzed and optimized in real time. And as you're driving, your car might suggest the perfect podcast based on your interests and the length of your commute.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. Personalized recommendations on the go. It does make you wonder, though, when does all this optimization start to feel, I don't know, a little too personalized?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's
Mhm.
something Dania grapples with throughout their work. They use this really interesting word, autonomy, and how it might be impacted in a data-driven society.
Autonomy? I mean, I get it. If algorithms are constantly predicting my needs and making choices for me, does that diminish my own sense of agency? Is that what they're getting at?
Exactly. It's this tension between convenience and control. On one hand, it's pretty appealing to have a world where everything is tailored to your preferences. But on the other hand, are we sacrificing something fundamental about our own decision-making in the process?
Right. And it's not just about those little everyday choices. What about the bigger decisions, like career paths, relationships, even political beliefs? Could algorithms subtly nudge us in certain directions, even if we don't realize it's happening?
And that's where it gets really interesting. Dania seems particularly concerned about the potential for these systems to reinforce existing biases or create new forms of inequality.
Oh, that's a huge concern. We've already seen how algorithms can perpetuate bias in areas like hiring, lending, even criminal justice. So how do we ensure that this data-driven SAM fund is equitable and just for everyone, not just a select few?
It's a big challenge, for sure, and it's something we need to be thinking about very carefully as these technologies continue to evolve. But you know what I find so fascinating about Dania's work? They don't shy away from these tough questions, even though they're still learning themselves.
That's what's so refreshing about their perspective. It's like they're inviting us along on their journey of discovery. Which reminds me, you mentioned something about a daily log. Did they keep track of their thought process throughout all of this?
They did. It's actually one of my favorite parts. It's like a window into their brain as they're trying to wrap their head around these complex concepts.
I love that kind of behind the scenes look at how someone learns. What kind of stuff did they jot down in there?
Well, there are notes about their Mask and Laring's Grunbog, which
Mm.
is their machine learning textbook,
Yeah.
but there are also these hilarious little asides about their favorite role-playing game, Mage the Ascension.
Mage the Ascension. I haven't heard that name in years. I used to spend hours lost in that game.
Right. And at first I thought, is Dania just procrastinating here? But then I realized there's something really profound about the way they're weaving together these seemingly disparate threads. Intense study, playful exploration, moments of frustration, even procrastination. It's so human, you know?
It is. It reminds us that learning isn't always linear. Sometimes you need those detours and distractions to make those aha moments really stick.
Exactly. And there's something really reassuring about seeing that reflected in Dania's work. They're not afraid to show their process, even the messy parts. Which brings us to one concept that I'm still trying to fully wrap my head around, these neural networks that we talked about earlier. Dana keeps coming back to them, but I need a bit more of an explanation to truly grasp what they are and why they're so important.
I'm with you on that one. They sound pretty central to this whole data driven society idea. So let's break it down. What are neural networks and why should we care?
So these neural networks, they're like learning machines. They're not just following pre-programmed rules.
That's the gist of it. It's like teaching a computer to think more like, well, a brain instead of a calculator.
Okay, so less step-by-step instructions, more like pattern recognition, adapting to new information.
Exactly. And that opens up a whole world of possibilities because now you can tackle problems that traditional programming couldn't even touch. Things like, oh, I don't know, recognizing faces in a crowd or translating languages in real time.
Wow, okay. That's powerful stuff.
Mm.
But also, and maybe this is just me, kind of makes you think twice. Like what happens when these systems get really good at learning? What if they start learning things we don't want them to or making decisions that have unintended consequences?
It's the big what if of the AI age, isn't it? And it's something Dania grapples with too. Remember how they talked about the importance of user experience, making these technologies accessible to everyone? Well, they also seem to be advocating for something even more fundamental: transparency.
Transparency, like being able to see inside the black box of AI, understanding how these systems are actually making decisions.
Exactly that. Because if we're going to trust these systems to make decisions that affect our lives, we need to be able to understand the reasoning behind those decisions, right?
Right. It can't just be magic. We need to know what's going on under the hood.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? Because even for those of us who spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff, it can be tough to wrap our heads around these complex systems. So how do we make them understandable, not just to experts, but to everyone?
It's a big question. Maybe even bigger than data-driven SAM Fund. But I feel like Dania might have a point with their whole learning style, the jumping between the textbook and the role-playing game.
You're saying maybe there's a lesson in there for all of us?
Maybe. Maybe it's about finding ways to make this stuff less intimidating, less abstract. What if we could teach people about AI through games or interactive simulations instead of just dry textbooks?
Now there's an idea. Because ultimately, this isn't just about teaching people about technology, it's about empowering them to participate in shaping how that technology gets used.
So it's a call to action then, for all of us to get involved, ask questions, and make sure that this data-driven society, this data-driven SAM fund that Daniel's describing, actually lives up to its potential.
Absolutely. Because the future of AI, it's not some predetermined thing, it's something we're all creating together, right here, right now.
Wow, well said. So there you have it, folks. We've journeyed from the depths of complex algorithms to the very human questions of responsibility, transparency, and the future we're building with these powerful technologies.
And who knows, maybe somewhere out there, Data Analytiker is already hard at work on their next groundbreaking project, pushing the boundaries of what's possible while never losing sight of the human element.
I, for one, can't wait to see what they come up with next. And to our listeners, what resonated with you today? What new questions are bubbling up in your mind? Because the conversation doesn't end here. In fact, it's just beginning. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.